We're back in session. Welcome back, colleagues. We're on second reading and beginning today with Bill 58-36. On Bill 58, Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Madam Speaker. And good afternoon, colleagues. Bill 58-36, as we had the amended version, as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, which was introduced by myself, Senator Atta, Senator Duenas, and Senator Nelson. It's an act to amend Section 2B of Public Law 34112 relative to extending the deadline for the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency to develop a functioning customs satellite inspection, holding, and secured sterile facility area. Move to place into 30 reading file and request to discuss the bill. Madam
Please
Speaker.
proceed. Thank
you, Madam Speaker. In addition, I also like to motion to add another co-sponsor. That will be Senator Tina Munoz Barnes for that motion, Madam Speaker.
On the motion to add another co-sponsor, the Vice Speaker, is there any objection to the motion? If so, raise your hand. Seeing no objection, motion carries. Please
Thank
proceed.
you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Guam's Customs and Quarantine Agency is asking for our help. How we can help them is with this bill, which amends Public Law 34112, that granted CQA 4 acres of a parcel located in Fide to the Customs and Quarantine Agency. And they are to develop the customs satellite inspection and holding and secure sterile facility area. Now, what the public law did was allow them 3 years to complete this, to build a functioning facility. Or what's going to happen is that the land, the 4 acres of land, would revert back to the government of Guam. The Public Law 34112 was enacted on July 17, 2018. And when I went over to visit the 4 acres in Fide, well, there's nothing developed there yet, and nothing in the pipeline really. So by this July, that land will go back to the government of Guam. If we, or when the Customs and Quarantine completes their facility, though, it's going to benefit our island greatly. For one, it will address our invasive species and allow the Customs and Quarantine secure area to really examine those containers for the invasive species, which we know it greatly affects our ecological system and our economy. Two, it will really help in tracking our drugs that illegally come through in containers. And three, it will give them a functioning facility to house an X-ray scanning portal that could be used to scan these containers, large bulk cargo, and they can search for illegal substances. So what this measure does is give us an extension of an additional 5 years for the Customs and Quarantine to build their facility. Madam Speaker, during the public hearing, we had positive testimony in support of Bill 5836, specifically one from the Port Authority Director, Mr. General Manager Rory Respicio, who is in support of the bill to extend for 5 years. Said it fits well into their master plan, and they're working hand in hand, and they have an MOU, and they want to see it continue because overall it benefits the Port Authority, and it benefits Customs, and it benefits our island. We also had support from the Director of Customs and Quarantine, and Mr. Ike Pareto, who identified that this would be very helpful in detecting contraband, illegal drugs, and invasive species, and help protect the security of our island at our borders. They really need the facility to house their inspection equipment. They also said that this building, the structure they'll be putting up there, would also house the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Public Health, Social Services, Department of Revenue Taxation, the Guam Police and Fire Department, and USDA, Animal Plant and Health Inspection, and Fish and Wildlife, and as well as U.S. Immigrations and Coast Guard. So they have a plan. It's in the development stage, and it's working well, and they just want to complete what they need to do. So what the bill is simply asking is, let's extend this 5 more years to help protect our borders, to help our Guam Customs Authority get their job done and get it done properly. I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to discuss this bill.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 58-36, is there any senator who would like to be recognized? Senator Atta, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of this bill. As you know, that the last year has been very difficult with the COVID situation. In extending the opportunity for the port, the Customs and Quarantine to build their facility, it just makes perfect sense. As we continue to strengthen our borders and strengthen our port, we need to ensure that the Customs has their facilities in place. And I believe that when we continue to build upon that strength, then we can have a stronger protection at our borders. I commend the author for bringing this bill forward, and I look forward for my colleagues to vote on it, and I ask them for their full support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Senator Dueñas, you're recognized, then the Vice Speaker, and then Senator Terlaje.
Cijus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I also rise in full support of Bill 5836, and I want to take this time to thank the author for including me as a co-sponsor. Just real briefly, Madam Speaker, I know that over the years, in fact, in the 31st Guam Legislature, yourself being a member as counsel and seeing the debate on a bill that I had introduced, creating the Guam Invasive Species Council, that is in full force at this time to try to prevent invasive species from continuing to proliferate in our island. You know, one of the things we knew, straight away was that we needed a greater relationship between Customs and Department of Agriculture when it comes to being partners at the border. There's no question Guam Customs is the force at the border, but to have agriculture at their side, I think is just so deeply important. And, we've seen a lot of great efforts and accomplishment, particularly at the airport, from Customs, intercepting, many invasive species that have arrived on our shores and they were able to destroy before they got out into our community. Of course, the airport, with its corridors and the sterility is a little bit easier to manage, I believe, in my humble opinion, than something as large and voluminous as the Port Authority. And so, now by having a co-located facility, and I was just really happy with those who spoke from the port as well as from agriculture and from Customs, that they truly envision being partners at the border, at the Port Authority of Guam, coming in, to help in this effort. I believe for many years the statement from Customs and Agriculture when it comes to invasive species and controlling the border is guns and drugs, not bugs. And the guns and drugs, of course, is kind of alludes to Customs and its efforts, although they have become and they have built up their army against bugs. But having a facility, having a co-located facility where they can really work together, where once these containers, are offloaded and they're cleared in an area to where they can just be side by side think it's a lot easier to manage that partnership. So for this reason, I think that this effort is definitely something we need to fully support, and also give the extension so that they can finish the plans and get this built. So once again, thank you to the author, and thank you, Madam Speaker, for having, and Rules Committee and others for getting this bill to the floor expeditiously, because I think it's very important. Si Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sidus Masi Lukwi. Vice Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon. Thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Bill number 58-36 COR. I'd like to extend my appreciation and gratitude to the main sponsor, Senator Jim Moylan, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this co-sponsorship with my other colleagues also. And again, as stated previously, Madam Speaker, this bill is administrative. I know that Guam Customs and Quarantine has been working with the necessary stakeholders within the administration to get the facilities constructed. This timeline is needed. I know that the Port GM has noted that he's been working closely with the clearinghouse to certain federal grants, and we know that this is a good thing for Guam, making sure that we protect what's coming in as far as giving Customs and Quarantine a home. Literally, this initiation started with Public Law 34112, and it was enacted in 2018. We're 3 years later, and we need this legislation to proceed so that Customs can complete this program. So I stand in full support of this, and I want to thank the good sponsor for giving me an opportunity to be part of that, and I ask that my colleagues please help us support this measure, as it really will do good for Guam and for the Customs and Quarantine Agency. Sanamasi.
Sinamasi. Vice Speaker, Senator Tilahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, when we started to think about the 12 million and 15 million that we lose from tobacco tax, we started to make that research, and I feel that the only way that we can account for all the tobaccos that are coming in is to, like what our good mayor had mentioned, Senator had mentioned, the co-location at Commercial Port, and consolidate at one particular area for custom and revenue taxation to have fully account for the tobacco that are coming in. And this is why I rise in support of Bill 5836 COR, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 58-36, is there, Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to rise in full support of Bill number 58-36 COR, and I want to commend the author for swiftly introducing this legislation to aid the Customs and Quarantine Agency in their fight against the war on drugs and illegal importation of prohibited substances, and also invasive species. There is right now a very good working relationship that we're seeing between Customs and Quarantine and the Port Authority of Guam, with their director and their general manager, looking at common interest in border security. And this bill will enable them to continue their efforts in developing the scheme for the new quarantine satellite inspection, holding and secured sterile facility area at the Port Authority of Guam. And one of the best advantages of this type of a facility there is that it'll bring them closer to the site, make them not only have greater space to conduct their area, but give them proximity to the border, which is what they had seen as a a big gap in their operations at quarantine. So I'm just glad that this body is going to facilitate that effort to making things a lot more feasible and conducive to business with customs, and also help strengthen to the continuing relationship and an effort that the port and the customs are putting into this collaborative effort to secure our borders. So I just rise in full support and again thank the author for his expeditious action in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Bill 58-36, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this bill. I certainly have no objections to supporting it. I think the whole issue with regards to having a customs facility at the Port of Guam has been one that has been a long time in coming. But I do want to note that when the original legislation was put in place by Senator Tom Atta several years ago, the same agenda and intent was there then as it is today with regards to the need to construct such a facility. I have no objection to it. I think things need to be noted, and I hope that Customs is actively working on getting the resources that they need to actually move forward in constructing a facility. Even if they're not able to ideally do everything that they would like in terms of what they're envisioning for such a facility, I think it would be important to get started, because we're essentially just extending a deadline because there has not been any significant action in terms of actual construction on the site. And for those of you certainly that were members at the time, Senator Atta had put a timeline in there with the hope that this would encourage Customs to facilitate moving forward with such a facility. There is a need, and I certainly recognize the efforts of Senator Chris Duenas during his previous term to move forward with regards to ensuring more effective inspections occurring on cargo coming into Guam, because that has not always been the case. We all want to pat ourselves on the back and thank ourselves for how well we're doing, but historically in the recent years, the increase of invasive species coming into the island continues, in spite of the fact that the plant protection funding that used to exist under the Department of Agriculture after 9/11 was absorbed into Customs with the expectation that the officers would be able to multitask and inspect all the different things and contraband and things that they're required to do, and then on top of that be well educated and be also able to address the invasive species issue. What we're finding over time is that that number continues to increase in spite of the efforts of Customs, and I certainly would like to see a greater partnership between agriculture, because this is their primary area of interest and expertise, be a part of this new facility with Customs so that we have that extra layer, that experience layer that will help address the issues of invasive species on top of all the other issues and concerns we have with increasing drugs and contraband coming into the island. Our ability to address these concerns, we've not been as effective. And then to find out the significantly small numbers of inspections that are occurring on an annual basis. Senator Tello a few weeks ago coordinated a meeting for us to go up to the airport and meet with Customs and go over their operations and also discuss the type of inspections that they perform at the airport as well as the port. And even with the equipment that they have now, of course, it has a certain limit in scale and size with regards to the mobile X-ray machine. The numbers of containers that are actually inspected on an annual basis is relatively small compared to the number of containers that are coming into the island. So there's no doubt there's an awful lot of things that may be slipping through our fingers simply because the volume of inspections that are not occurring. Of course, yes, they have physical inspections. The challenge we have is we have containers that are taken out of the yard and they're taken to the point of delivery, and it's in those locations that maybe actual physical inspections are occurring with a Customs agent present. But nevertheless, I mean, that's still a small percentage to the overall amount of cargo coming into the island and things that we are not able to capture. Hopefully this facility will provide a contained area for them to do their inspections. Also, if there are invasive species, particularly those that have wings, that the contained area will prohibit that, those type of invasives from exiting from the inspection station. Right now, you don't have those type of protections even at the airport with the facility that they have there. You can open a box or container and it's pretty much accessible to the open roll-up door that's adjacent to it. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, certainly we can all comprehend and know that, and we can pat ourselves and rah-rah on this issue, but we're nowhere near where we need to be with regards to the level of work that needs to be done with regards to contraband and other illegal material that's being brought into the island, drugs included. And as I mentioned earlier, on top of that, we definitely need to address the issue of invasive species because we're starting to see the adverse impact that this is having. 12 or 13 years ago, the Rhino Beetle was isolated to Tumon. It was believed that it came in construction material that was shipped into Guam. Today, now, everyone else, whether you have an interest in it or not, are seeing the adverse impacts with our coconut trees and our other palm trees that we have on Guam as a result of that. And it has adverse impact to the quality of life we have here, certainly to our economy, and certainly to critical agriculture infrastructure that's of value to our island. So I'm hopeful. I'm always going to be hopeful. Now's the time. The fact that we're having to extend the timeline tells me that more work needs to be done, and I certainly hope the respective agencies facilitate their work in addressing this, because the location and the property that Senator Atta had designated and that was passed by the Guam Legislature is in very, very critical real estate. Eventually, if there's ever a need to expand the port space down at the Port Authority of Guam, F7 ultimately was the location which is a portion of this property is located. And those were part of initial expansion plans when they were looking at the military buildup. If they had planned it and developed it to the level of what they were originally envisioning, some of this property would have been part of F7. And down the road, as the island continues to grow and expand, and if they need more wharf capacity, this is going to impact that location. So by all means, I mean, we wish Customs well, but we also want to I certainly want to see the responsibility squarely on their shoulders to facilitate moving forward and actually addressing the construction of a facility, because what we are doing is simply extending a deadline because there's no tangible construction that has occurred as a result of the original legislation being passed. So with that, Madam Speaker, I certainly support it, and I look forward to seeing Customs moving forward in the construction and see their operations improve so that we can address these growing problems here on the island. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill 58-36, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized to speak on Bill 58-36? If not, then Senator Moylan, Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the sponsor of the bill, Senator Moylan, for having the foresight to see that this is a necessary provision to be done for the Customs and Quarantine Agency. We appropriated this property in the 34th Guam Legislature. We are now in the 36th Guam Legislature. And within that time, Madam Speaker, there has been changes within the executive branch and also changement of the directors and the general managers in the overall government of Guam. And I have the utmost confidence in the new general manager in facilitating that these things be done properly in collaboration with Customs and Quarantine Agency. There is a lot of pushback in the 34th Guam Legislature for this parcel of property being facilitated through the Customs and Quarantine Agency. And so these are just some of the challenges that we feel. But to put politics aside, Madam Speaker, the bottom line is that it takes years to institute a plan. And then we also have to understand what are the priorities of the executive branch. And now, Madam Speaker, that this is a priority for the executive branch who oversees government agencies, which also is the new general manager of the Port Authority of Guam and the new Customs and Quarantine Director. They are looking forward to implementing this plan and to creating a structure for the Customs and Quarantine Agency, which is very well needed. And so, Madam Speaker, I can go on and on and on the record about the history between the oversight chair, who was the former Customs and Quarantine oversight chair, who was the former Customs and Quarantine Port Authority of Guam, in history on the record. But that's not why we're here today, Madam Speaker. We're here today to get a mission done. And if that mission needs a little bit more time, because the planning was not properly put in place through previous administrations, then let's do that today moving forward. So I thank Senator Moylan for the sponsor of this bill, and I look forward to the passage of this bill. And I'd like to thank my colleagues also in advance, and I humbly ask their support for this bill. It's just a simple provision to allow Customs and Quarantine a little bit more time to utilize and implement a plan so that we can work to stop the invasive species coming into our island and improve drug interdiction through the Port Authority of Guam. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader Nelson. On Bill 58-36, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized? If not, then Senator Moylan, you may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for your support on the bill. Madam Speaker, I also like to motion to include as co-sponsors Senator Peter Tulahi, Senator Mary Torres, and Senator Joanne Brown.
Could you repeat that motion?
A motion to include, sorry? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Include additional co-sponsors as Senator Talina Nelson, Senator Peter Tulahi, Senator Mary Torres, Senator Joanne Brown.
On the motion, is there any objection to the motion? Please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam
proceed.
Speaker. No other closing comments on that. I'd like to continue to move this bill forward at third reading.
I'm sorry, Senator Moylan, I can hardly hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here you go. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have no other closing remarks on this bill, just to continue to move on the third reading file for support of my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the motion to place Bill 58-36 to the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Colleagues, we're now on Bill number 62-36, but we are going to take a 5-minute break while please refresh your drives. So there are some amendments that have been uploaded to this bill's drive. Bill 62-36, and 5-minute recess. Thank you, colleagues. We're back in session. Again, please refresh your drives because there have been additional amendments loaded since we last spoke. And now we will proceed to Bill 62-36 LS. Senator Virgil, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we place Bill number 62-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, introduced by myself and Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, an act to amend subsection 4310D and 43.70, both of Chapter 43, Title 9, Guam Code annotated relative to penalties and restitution for theft of livestock or agricultural products.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This measure was something that my office and I had actually begun working on in the previous term, but didn't quite have the time to complete in time to be able to bring it to the floor in the prior term. It's based off of an issue that was brought to my attention by the Guam Department of Agriculture, that they had heard from farmers, and I had heard from farmers as well, that they felt that the current theft of property law wasn't explicit enough in including agricultural products. In addition to that, they also wanted to allow for ways to have people caught stealing also be required to pay back the farmers for that theft. So this bill changes both of those things in the existing statute. So there has been some talk and some debate about whether or not the definition part is necessary, and I'll concede you could argue that it's unnecessary, but I think this just makes it more clear, makes it crystal clear. And the reason why is because in the definition of the word property, in the current statute, is defined as meaning anything of value, including real estate, tangible, intangible personal property, contract rights, shows as in action, and other interests or claims to wealth, admission, transportation of tickets, captured or domestic animals, food and drink, electric or other power, and trade secrets. I think that's the part that got some farmers concerned, is when they looked at it, it only said captured or domestic animals, so it's referring to livestock, but it didn't say agricultural products. So this bill adds in it, under that definition of property, to include agricultural product, which includes floriculture, horticulture, viticulture, aquaculture, forestry products and commodities, shrubbery, nuts, coffee, seeds, or other farm or plantation products or commodities grown or raised by a bona fide farmer. So again, this bill was brought about because of concerns brought to me by the Department of Agriculture and numerous farmers over the years. To be frank, agricultural theft is something that I've heard about for many years from different people that I know, different farmers that I know. A lot of farmers down south, particularly I would hear from, would complain about how it seems as if the thieves or the saki are ready to harvest the produce as soon as the produce is ready to harvest. They said it's like they know when it's time to harvest, and they beat the farmers to their own harvest. They'll saki all the produce the day before they're supposed to harvest it. So a lot of farmers have said this has been a big problem, and that when they call authorities, they feel like they haven't been taken seriously, and that there's been no real recourse for them. And that even if they do catch the culprits, they're not able to really get their money back. And that's the other thing that this bill does. This bill includes in it a provision that requires that agricultural product be paid back to the farmer at its fair market value as determined by the courts, with consultation with the Department of Agriculture. So currently, in the current code, that's what's required of livestock, but it's not required of agricultural product. So this bill includes agricultural product. So the Department of Agriculture estimates that thousands and thousands of dollars of produce are stolen each year, and it's hard to get an accurate estimate on that, but we have heard from numerous farmers that those estimates are probably too low. During the public hearing also, there were numerous issues brought up and some ideas for how to strengthen the bill. And so I've worked on some amendments with my office and with the Department of Agriculture to amend the bill. And I do have several amendments, a few amendments I'd like to proffer, if allowed to do so at this time.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first amendment, if you look in the drive, it's labeled as AB 62-CER L22P2.
L22P2. Okay,
Yes.
please proceed.
And it's to line 22, page 2, to amend the bill to read, after it says a fine and punished accordingly, it says, which may include but shall not be limited to the confiscation of a defendant's personal property, such as the vehicle or vehicles or any equipment used in the theft. In the theft. That's it.
All right.
This amendment again came about as a result of the public hearing. In the public hearing, a lot of the farmers who testified said that the current penalties just aren't strict enough. They recommended putting more teeth into the bill, so I think this is one way to add more teeth. So basically, if a thief is caught stealing produce and they're using their pickup truck and they're caught with the pickup truck using that to steal the produce, the pickup truck can be confiscated or any other equipment involved in that theft. So again, that's the purpose of this amendment, and I ask for my colleagues' support.
On the amendment, Vice Speaker Munoz-Barnes, you're recognized.
Si Jules Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise and support the good author of this measure and this amendment. This just gives a clear message to our farmers to say that we as policymakers, as the oversight chair and the vice chair of agriculture, that we are listening. The farmers are very important, and this based on hearing their passions and pleas for us to make sure that what they work for and what they do to provide for the livelihoods, not just for themselves, but for the residents at large, that this amendment will help enforce that teeth to it. And this was something that was talked about deeply in that public hearing. So I want to say I rise in support of that amendment, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this measure and the amendment. Sina Maasi.
Sina Maasi. Senator Nelson on the floor amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a question for the sponsor of the amendment.
Please state the question.
Madam Speaker, is there any place in the Guam Code annotated that reflects this type of consequence for the confiscation of a defendant's personal property, such as vehicle or vehicles, or any equipment used in the theft? That is my question, Madam Speaker.
All right. Senator Virgil, will you yield to that question?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe there is, and in fact, I think a more recent one is in the scuba ban bill. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we included a provision that allows for the confiscation of equipment used when people are caught illegally fishing with scuba gear. And I believe hunting gear as well.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I know they said hunting gear, but do they confiscate vehicles as well, and the boats? And can they can the sponsor refer to the Guam Code annotated in reference to this, if it is in fact true?
Senator Virgil, would you like to yield to that question?
Sure, yes. I believe it does include the vehicles, but if you would like me to refer to the Guam Code annotated, I'd like to ask for a few minutes recess so I can pull up the code. I don't have it off the top of my head.
All right, we'll take a 1-minute recess. Thank you. All right. We're back in session. We left off with Senator Nelson had the floor, had Senator Virgil had yielded to a question from Senator Nelson. Senator Virgil.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to look up the code. So under 5 GCA 63128, illegal use of nets, vessels, including engines, motors, and all vessel accessories, paraphernalia, beasts of burden, traps, firearms, electrical devices, or vehicles, seizure, forfeiture, proceeding, sale, or destruction. It says any net, vessel, including engines, motors, and all vessel accessories, paraphernalia, including scuba diving equipment, spear guns or spears, beasts of burden, trap, firearm, electrical device, or vehicle used for taking or transporting fish or game, taken in violation of the provisions of this article is a public nuisance. Every person authorized to make an arrest for such violation shall seize and keep such net, vessel, including engines, motors, and all vessel accessories, paraphernalia, including scuba diving equipment, spear guns or spears, trap, firearm, electrical device, or vehicle, and report the seizure to the Department of Agriculture. There's also another section, I believe. For hunting, subsection 63209E, all guns, traps, nets, and other equipment, vessels, vehicles, aircraft, and other means of transportation used to aid in the taking, possessing, selling, purchasing, offering for sale or purchase, transporting, delivering, receiving, carrying, shipping, exporting any plants or wildlife in violation of this article, any regulation made pursuant thereto, or any permit or certificate or agreement made or issued thereunder shall be subject to forfeiture to the government of Guam upon conviction of any criminal violation pursuant to subsection 63205 and subsection 63206 and subsection 63208 and subsection 63209F. The department may sell forfeited items, the resultant monies to be deposited in the Wildlife Conservation Fund to promote the welfare of plants and wildlife. So thank you for the opportunity to read that, Madam Speaker. And with that, that's why I believe that this amendment is good and should be allowed, since we're allowing these funds to be used in other cases to promote the welfare of plants and wildlife. We should also allow this to promote the welfare of our farmers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Nelson, you're recognized again.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the amendment, it says to add a provision in page 2, line 22, which originally reads in the bill, subsection 43.70, reimbursement to owner of stolen livestock or agricultural product. What is being added is the provision of the statement or agricultural product. In any case where there is conviction under the provisions of Chapter 43 of this code and the property stolen by defendants was livestock or agricultural product, as that term is used in subsection 43.10 delta, in addition to a fine or imprisonment imposed, the court shall direct that the defendant pay to owner of the stolen livestock or agricultural product its fair market value as determined by the court upon consultation with the Department of Agriculture. Failure to make such payment shall be deemed a failure to pay a fine and punished accordingly. Another addition is if a defendant is found unable to pay due to financial hardship, the defendant may be required by the court to perform alternative community service hours credited against the fine imposed pursuant to Chapter 80, Article 6, Title 9, Guam Code annotated. And so what is being added to the bill, Madam Speaker, is the provision of the addition of where a fine punished in line 22 and punished accordingly, which may include but shall not be limited to the confiscation of a defendant's personal property, such as the vehicle or vehicles, or any equipment used in the theft, if a defendant is found unable to pay due to And so, Madam Speaker, already in the bill, there is a provision to allow the courts to perform or decide a consequence on what may occur. And I understand that this is the farmers' livelihood. This is our farmers in our communities, their livelihood. This is what they work hard day in and day out to produce for them to survive and for them to live. And I understand the hardship in that, because this is also how we were raised as children by my father. But the challenge that I see in front of this amendment today, Madam Speaker, is there's no real differentiation where in the public hearing, the farmers understand if you take agricultural product to feed your family. The farmers understand that because that is our culture. You know, we would take our produce and we would go fuck-eye it to everyone in our family or, you know, to other members of the community. Now fuck-eye has a different term, but back then that's not what the term really meant. And also our farmers understand if a family needs to survive, of course, we will help and give what we can. You know, Madam Speaker, when my grandparents were growing up after the war, they give the best pieces of chicken, if they make kadu, to the rest of the family. And then within their family, they make do on their own. That's our culture, the anaphemalic spirit. And so our farmers believe in that. Our farmers believe that if the person who needed to take the produce to feed their family, then they would work something out. But the question here is the commercial, those stealing from the farm for commercial reasons. Then the challenge here in this amendment, Madam Speaker, is it does not differentiate between whether it is a family that I'm taking this for my family, or if I'm taking this just if I'm stealing this crop out of greed, not to survive. If one is stealing the crop out of greed and not to survive. And so, Madam Speaker, on the surface, the way this amendment is written, I cannot support the amendment because it does not differentiate between the two. However, there is a provision in the bill that allows the courts to discern on that matter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the floor amendment, the Virgil floor amendment, Senator Taitagui, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in favor of this amendment. I too was at the public hearing, hearing some of the comments and suggestions that were being made. You know, in today's time, it's totally different back in the olden days when we left our doors open, our windows open. Nowadays, you know, we even keep our watch on our children walking down the street, you know, even if it's for a block. Times have changed. I don't think it justifies for a person stealing another person's produce who they put sweat and funding in to grow these crops, that it's okay for them to take it and then give it to a family who's in need. It's okay to steal. Well, what about that person that grew the crop? I mean, that means you're going to say it's okay for anybody to steal anything as long as they give it to someone who's in need? I mean, it's nice to be Robin Hood, but at this point, the farmers are asking for help because they've been doing everything they can possible to stop the stealing of their produce. I know that some people in Inalahan who's actually put up cameras to try and catch these individuals stealing their bananas. And this comes from a family of farmers who don't have a lot in the first place. You know, every year, Madam Speaker, you know, there's prayers that are sent out, rosaries that typhoons or storms that come by don't ruin their crop. So that's one thing they have to deal with already, and saying prayers. Now they're praying that nobody comes and steals their crops so that they can feed their own families. And a lot of times, these farmers, they give some of their produce, some of their hard work to individuals who don't have. But we need to put a deterrent here to say, if you are going to do the crime, then you must also have a fine of taking your property, the property you use to steal these products. And this is from the farmers, Madam Speaker. Enough's enough. They need help. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in full support of this amendment.
On the Virgil amendment, is there anyone else who would like to speak on the floor amendment? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of this amendment. You know, about 14 years ago, I had the opportunity for 4 years to work with the College of Natural and Applied Science at the University of Guam and work with soil and water conservation, and certainly work with a number of our farmers here in our local community, to include, Farmer Ernie Wistick, who many of us are very familiar recently with what happened in his situation, where the corn that he's worked very hard to grow, and works very hard every year to do that, was stolen. And that's just one example of many that have happened in our island for our local farmers that, essentially give of their heart and their soul in terms of the labor that they invest to actually grow their crops or take care of their livestock, that they essentially do this not just for a living, but for the passion of being able to grow and farm, which would be wonderful to see more, and as we are in some cases, younger members of our generation getting involved and engaged so that we have a better opportunity for food security here on Guam. And there's nothing like having fresh produce. I mean, nothing compares to that, no matter what shelf you buy it on or where it's flown in from. Nothing compares to having fresh local produce in our community. But I think at the same time, in order to recognize the value of the work that our farmers are investing, there should be consequences to that. In the past, it was, a day, no big deal. But, back in the day, when people wanted to have something, or they wanted fruits from your tree, be it your mango tree, your banana tree, your lemon tree, normally the courtesy on Guam was to ask. You paid respects to the owner of the property. In most cases, Lanny, if you come to visit, if they had it available, you didn't even have to ask. They offered it to you to take home to your family so that you can, take advantage of the fruits of their labor, and they gave it willingly, simply because you asked. Maybe if you didn't have it or you really needed it, as long as you showed respect, they would be more than happy to give this to you. Nowadays, it's a very different reality that we're facing here on our island, where there's some people, unfortunately, in our community. Some say it's out of need or desperation, but I'm sorry. Even in this day and age when there's a time of need or desperation, simply asking for support or help makes a big difference. People will still do that. A lot of people still give very generously, especially for those that are in need. But nowadays, it's gotten to the point where, todo tayo respeto. They just have no shame. They have no shame to take the labor of others. And in most cases, we like to think, yes, they need the food because they don't have any food or whatever the case may be. But in most cases, it's to be able to take these hard-earned resources that farmers have invested their time and energy to grow because they want to sell it, because they want to make a buck off it, with no regard to the fact that they've invested no effort. And it's sad that we're even at this stage that we're having to do this because of what's happening out in our community. I think all of us have. I've experienced this. My mom has a banana tree that's right next to, it's on our property. It's next to her fence. And I'll tell you, it's just a matter of time. Before you even have a chance to pick your banana off the tree, Esta is gone. Somebody already came and cut the tree down at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure many of our people have experienced this, but more so for farmers, and particularly our farmers that make their living planting and growing their agricultural products or their livestock or their fish or whatever the case may be, part out of passion, but more also to also feed their families. And I think we should look at this no different than if you walk in a store and somebody steals something off the shelf, or they break into your home and they steal what you own. It should be considered at that level, because at the end of the day, really, you're taking away someone's livelihood. You're taking away some other member of our community. You're taking away their property, something that they have worked hard to do. So by all means, if that's the consequence, hopefully it discourages people from being irresponsible. Sad to say, we have to put laws in place because we do have a certain segment and members of our community that are irresponsible and don't think anything of the fact of going and taking something that is not theirs. So I support this, and I support the consequence for anyone who violates this law and violates the hard work and the hard labor of our farmers here on the island. So with that, Madam Speaker, again, I rise in support of this amendment. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Senator Perez on the amendment.
This is Masi, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment, and I was present at the public hearing, and in listening to a lot of the testimony, my reaction to, well, basically a lot of the testimony was that the bill needed to be stricter in its penalties to ensure that theft is dealt with, agricultural theft is dealt with appropriately. And in giving their testimony, my response was a sense of pride. I felt it was very appropriate, I guess in Mes Chamorro, to see the values being so strong about, ensuring that we don't steal. I think that's really, I think this amendment is very important because it codifies those values of doing what is right. And, it may seem strong, but, I hear stories from, my parents about how when they did something wrong, they were dealt with swiftly. And I think this amendment is in line with that, that if we want to correct what's wrong in our society, we need to ensure that we're dealing with this in an appropriate manner. And yes, perhaps the problems that are associated with theft, agricultural theft, are rooted in other things, and those need to be dealt with. And this bill does address that. It does have a portion where, restorative justice is also present in this bill. So it does provide more options for the courts to deal with it appropriately, whether they want to enforce it strongly in addition to rehabilitating the person. And again, it's within our culture that, we respect each other, and agricultural theft is not part of our culture, and it should be dealt with. This is Masi.
Thank you, Senator. On the floor amendment, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized on the floor amendment? If not, then Senator Virgil, you may close on that floor amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I'd just like to ask my colleagues to support this amendment. Again, it came at the request of the farmers. I know there's some concern brought up by one of our colleagues about the law not differentiating between people who steal out of necessity for food. But I think we have existing laws that also don't differentiate for that either. I don't think there's anything that differentiates in law if someone shoplifts, for example, because they needed the item, it's not necessarily differentiated in law. I think that's where a judge comes in, and the judge will make the determination based upon all the facts, relevant facts pertinent to the case. For example, with our scuba fishing ban law, and hunting law, illegal hunting laws, those laws also don't differentiate necessarily between, say, someone who's illegally hunting, but they're starving, so they're illegally hunting for that. Again, it's up to the courts to determine that. So with that, I believe that this is a fair amendment, and again, I believe it came at the request of the farmers for more teeth, and I ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. So on the amendment, we're going to vote now. Is there any objection to the amendment? There's an objection, so all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment passes. Senator Virgil, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The next amendment I have to proffer is L24, and it's to line 24, page 2, and it's to amend the bill to read where it says alternative community service hours credited against the fine. My amendment adds the words or reimbursement. So again, this is just to allow so that in the case that the defendant is not able to afford paying the reimbursement, a judge can determine to give that defendant alternative community service hours. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, so we're adding the words or reimbursement by this amendment. All right,
Correct.
on the amendment, is there anyone who'd like to speak on the amendment? Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It says, page 2, line 24, just a point of inquiry, Madam Speaker. Alternative community service hours credited against the fine or reimbursement is what is being added, as the sponsor mentioned, but I don't see in the original bill the words or both. Is that also being added, Madam Speaker, even though it's not stated in the amendment?
It would appear that way.
That's my
Senator
point of
Virgil, could you
inquiry.
please clarify, is your amendment, should that or both be double underlined?
Yes, I apologize. It looks like or both should be double underlined as well. So it should be or reimbursement double underlined, and then or both double underlined.
All right. Okay, so that's the amendment, everyone. It's or reimbursement imposed or both. Okay? Senator Nelson, please, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to hold the same position that I held for the last amendment. And that is, I feel that we are already penalizing those who are accused or allegedly stealing from the farms food for whatever purpose is needed. They're taking food from the farm. And so I'd like to believe that the courts have the wisdom and discernment to be able to facilitate an appropriate consequence rather than us stating what consequence must be given. We don't know the situation of the family, or if the family member is taking the food from the farm for whatever reason to provide for their family. We don't know. And so adding this specific provision again takes away the authority of the judiciary, the courts, to act on their own wisdom and discernment because they're able to see and understand the whole case. Right now, this amendment is just taking things for face value as what we would add as a consequence, what we believe, but we wouldn't understand the whole case of the individual or the defendant, what we believe would be proper and adequate action. So I oppose this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, anyone would like to be recognized on the amendment? All right, if not, then Senator Virgil, you may close on this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, again, this amendment is just to allow the ability for the courts to determine if someone is unable to pay the fines imposed or the reimbursement amount, that instead they can do alternative community service. And I ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so on the amendment, and just to make it very clear, the amendment should read, alternative community service hours credited against the fine or reimbursement that's being added, imposed, or both, that's also being added, okay? So on the amendment, is there any objection to the amendment? Senator Nelson, was that an objection to the amendment? Okay, so there's an objection, so all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All right, amendment passes. Senator Virgil, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next amendment is L23. I'm sorry, it looks like they might be out of order, but L23 is the next amendment I'm going to proffer, and that is to line 23 of page 2. And this is to amend the bill to read where it says financial hardship, crossing out the defendant may be required by the court to perform, and instead putting in the court may require, but not be limited to, the auctioning of all personal property confiscated in accordance with this section or the performing of. So again, this just goes along with the previous amendment that allows for the confiscation of the equipment involved in the theft, and this would allow the court the option to be able to auction off the personal property that was confiscated as a result of the theft. I ask my colleagues for their support for this amendment. It goes together well with the previous amendment that an earlier amendment that we passed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right, on the amendment, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Senator Nelson, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a point of inquiry. The question for the sponsor of the amendment. I have a question for the sponsor of the amendment, and the question is, does this differentiate in any way whether the individual, let me paint a picture. An individual borrows their cousin's truck and uses their cousin's truck to take food from the farm for their family. So by adding this provision, does this state that the conservation officers, or in the previous amendment state that the individual's cousin's truck whom they borrowed to take the food for their family would be confiscated as payment or remittance for this measure that is being proposed to be a criminal offense?
Would the sponsor like to yield to the question?
Sure, Madam Speaker. I'm trying to understand the question. I think the question is similar to the previous question. So the answer is, if I understand the question correctly, The answer is no, the law itself does not differentiate, but neither do similar laws that involve the confiscation of personal property. For example, someone who is illegally hunting for food, it's not differentiated in the code. Someone who's illegally fishing for food is not differentiated in the code. It's also not differentiated whether or not someone who's illegally fishing borrowed their primu's boat, or if it's his own boat, but he borrowed the engine from his primu because his engine wasn't working at the time. Since we're speaking in hypotheticals, I'm just going down this hypothetical route. Or for example, maybe if the fisherman had a boat, the engine wasn't his, the engine belonged to one cousin, but actually the scuba gear was another cousin. None of that's differentiated in the law. Current laws just say if they're caught using that equipment, it gets confiscated, then the courts sort out the rest. They sort out all the other relevant facts to the case, and ultimately the judge will make the ultimate determination. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, Senator Nelson, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the sponsor for that clarification. Because there is no differentiation between the two, Madam Speaker, this poses a risk to those that are family members who want to help other family members in life. So, for example, and I hate to use me in the case, but I'll use me in the case, that if I was to loan my vehicle out to someone, and then that individual, my family member, went and took produce from a location because he or she needed money to provide he or she needed food to provide for their family, then they would confiscate my truck, and then we leave it for the courts to decide. And then, not to mention, Madam Speaker, I need to go to work the next day. So how am I going to get to work if they confiscate my vehicle that I, through good faith, lent out to a family member? And so since the law does not differentiate between the two, I think that that's where we need to bring more clarity on what is what, because we know that we live in a community here. You know the term "no child is," or every child is, or child is raised by a village. That's true, especially in my case. It's in our culture, you know. And so I understand we want a consequence for people who take and who steal and who thieve. But also this has secondary and tertiary impacts to other people's familial lives and their daily lives, of whether they get to school, whether they take their children to school, if they're to loan out their vehicle, and then their vehicle gets confiscated because they didn't know that the other person was going to do such an act, because we cannot control what other people do, Madam Speaker. And so again, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but there's no differentiation for this case. And it was very clear. So I object to this amendment as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Senator Peter Terlahi, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I just want to go back and kind of just refresh on what the previous speaker is talking about. And I guess she's talking about maybe third party. And I don't think it's fair if somebody borrows your car and got caught fishing, and then the person that owns the car does not know whether you're going to go illegally fishing and you got caught. So I believe that the third party should have the chance to reclaim, especially for a vehicle, especially for a vehicle that's still under the, paying the bank. And I guess we got to be a little bit more lenient on something like that, as far as third party is concerned. And I like the bill. I like some of the amendments but we need to think about the third party person. We cannot just take away his vehicle just because he doesn't know. For example, he doesn't know that this person is going to go out and go fishing in a no fishing zone, and then he got caught, and then they're going to confiscate his vehicle, not knowing that his vehicle is going to be used for something like that. And that's my concern about, and I understand what the previous speaker is talking about. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the amendment? Senator Taitigui, you are recognized.
Si Diyos mas me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think my colleague, Senator Brown, mentioned it earlier, that, it's a different day and age, and when it comes to, helping other people out who don't have the means or unable to feed themselves, it's just a matter of just asking, and it makes sense. I remember those days, people asking, it doesn't hurt to try. But, Madam Speaker, if you ask a farmer who's put their blood, sweat, and tears in this, and you ask them, oh, is it okay? Can we let them go? Can we let them keep their vehicle? I don't think they're going to say, no, it's not okay. What about my family? Now, Madam Speaker, the author of this legislation and this amendment has already made it clear when he talked of other laws governing other areas, such as hunting, and fishing illegally. And those laws are put in place. Don't you think, Madam Speaker, that our farmers deserve the same justice too? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, then Senator Virgil, you may close on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I understand the concerns about someone borrowing something and then using it and getting confiscated. But it is consistent with other areas of the Guam Code and in other laws. Generally, for example, if someone borrows your vehicle and they're caught speeding and get into a car accident or something, or even just some other traffic violation that allows for the impounding of a vehicle, that vehicle can be impounded, even though it's not the owner that was driving the vehicle, but someone who borrowed the vehicle. So, again, I think this is consistent with existing laws, and yeah, I do understand the concerns. Of course, no one wants that to happen, where they let someone borrow their vehicle or anything, and then it gets impounded. That's just the way our laws work and our system works. And again, that's where the courts come in. So the courts have the ability, the judge has the ability to determine all the specific issues surrounding a case. And if that's the case, the judge has the ability to not allow the confiscation, because it is a may clause. Again, I ask for my colleagues' support with this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. So on the amendment, is there an objection? All right. So all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment passes. Senator Virgil, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I believe this is my final amendment. Let me double check, but I believe, yes, this is my final amendment. It is L26, and it is to line 26, page 2.
Please proceed.
And this amends the bill to read under Section 4, Article 1, Chapter 63, Title 5, Guam Code annotated, It amends the section where it talks about Chief Conservation Officer duties. And in that section, at the end of this paragraph, it adds a sentence that says, where it says that the Chief Conservation Officer and Deputy Conservation Officers acting hereunder shall have the powers of peace officers to carry arms, to make arrests, and to issue citations for violations. It adds the following sentence, as well as to investigate, detain, or arrest in regard to the theft of agricultural products, as that term is used in subsection 43.10D. And then there's a standard severability clause. Actually, I don't think that part's amended, That's the amendment, Madam Speaker. And what that amendment does is, again, this was as a result of the public hearing. A lot of the farmers and those who testified in favor of the measure really asked that this be given to conservation officers because, as was provided in the testimony, a lot of times farmers, when they have produce that is stolen, they often call the Department of Agriculture seeking their assistance. So the Department of Agriculture agreed too that yes, they're usually notified of a lot of these thefts. A lot of the farmers said, let the conservation officers be allowed to investigate it because they feel that perhaps some other law enforcement agencies may be too busy, and they just thought it's another way to improve the investigation. So what this amendment does is it does not take away any of the jurisdiction of GPD or anyone else. It just adds under conservation officers' duties the ability to investigate, detain, or arrest with regards to the theft of agricultural products. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right, on the amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, then Senator Virgil, you may close on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just ask for my colleagues' support to my final amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any objection to this amendment? If not, then no objection. Amendment is passed. So on the bill, Vice Speaker, did you still want to be recognized on the bill?
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this measure and rise in full support of it, and thank the good main sponsor, who's the Oversight of Agriculture. Thank him for the opportunity to let me be second co-sponsor on this measure. Again, Madam Speaker, this bill really is an answer to the concerns that the farmers had been bringing up for quite some time now. And as I said earlier, it is a way to show the farmers that we are truly listening and to their concerns. I know that this bill, Madam Speaker, will also include the items that were brought up in the public hearing as it relates to the agricultural products and as definition in the criminal code. And this was due to that concern of theft on a lot of agriculture products here in the different farms. And Madam Speaker, I want to share that one who's tried to step into the shoes of a farmer and know the hard work that they go through, especially as it relates to planting and harvesting, and knowing that it takes a while from seed to seedling to full plant growing to harvesting, you learn to appreciate what your fellow farmers go through. And when you get that taken away from you right before harvest time, you literally feel a sense of violation. And whether it be animals in the farm or plants or just all the agricultural products that we need to sustain ourselves, Madam Speaker, it is really, really devastating when your products get stolen. I know that for a fact because I used to harvest peppers. And for me, in the 2016, 2017, 2018, it was something that I did just to try and find some R&R. But with that, a friend and I, a girlfriend and I had the opportunity to do 200 plants at a time every time we were harvesting our pepper trees. But to get things taken from you, especially right when you're ready to harvest them so you can share with other family members or even sell your products, can really get you at the heart. And it hurts, and it hurts bad. And for many years, you know, we share our products. We share our vegetables, our fruits, our just everything, right? So when the farmers had called us, sharing with us this concern, and it was happening more and more, we said to them, we're going to do something about it. And the good author, Madam Speaker, was very fast to working closely with the farmers and listening, truly listening and saying, we're gonna do this, we're gonna write down all your concerns, but we are going to be able to make sure that they know that if you take something without asking, without fatatoing, and then you're gonna get, you know, you're gonna get punished for it. And the farmers are not asking for anything. They work hard to grow and to plant and to just give. And I think this bill is really important for them. And you've heard the passion on both sides. Some who would say, you know what, sometimes you don't know if somebody's stealing because they need to provide food, or you don't know if they're stealing it to just make money. The ultimate end, you shouldn't be taking. In our culture, you ask, you fatata, if you really need something. And if you take it and you don't ask for permission, then it's a violation. It's wrong, outright wrong. So this is my way of showing the farmers that we care, we support their efforts, we know the work they do is hard and they are great, and we know that they take care and love the land, and we will listen to them. And I support this measure, and I want to thank Senator Clint for giving me the opportunity to be his second co-sponsor on this. So, Sainamasi, Madam Speaker.
Sainamasi, Vice Speaker. On the bill, on the bill, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker. I do rise in support of this bill for many of the reasons said by the previous speakers, but I also want to proffer an amendment. And the amendment is labeled AB 62-SFPL 16P21. So the amendment basically adds, or the production costs and fair market value to the owner of the stolen agricultural product. So this is in response to the public testimony in regards to the fair market value, that it is basically the bill needed more teeth, and having the perpetrator pay back the fair market value did not seem just. And there was a recommendation to include production cost. And I think that is, that's why this amendment is being proffered. And, for those that, grow, from what my understanding is that, the work and the resources that are used are much greater than the cost of the product itself at the market. So I wanted to take that into consideration with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the Perez amendment to add the words "or the production costs and fair market value to the owner of the stolen agricultural product." On that amendment, is Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think on the amendment, Madam Speaker, I think I'm missing something. Perhaps I'm not getting it. From my understanding, when we put legislation and it is signed into, if and when it is signed into law, there's a process that takes place. And in this case, it seems like when we add a consequence for this specific provision, that the courts would have the wisdom and discernment to decide on the consequence. So now we're adding "or the production cost to the owner of stolen agricultural product." And I think the heart of what I'm missing is, Madam Speaker, is that I am certain that this is not the first time where crops have been taken without asking from a farm. If you break into a house, okay. If you harm an individual, okay. If you abuse someone, okay. But now it's almost like we need to find justice for taking food. For taking food. Always justice. I cannot support this amendment, Madam Speaker, because now not only are we going to, if this bill should pass, not only are we going to affect a second or third party person for if someone borrowed my vehicle and went and took food, now we're going to increase the cost. Because now it's not just $10 for a bag of corn for every 10 pieces of corn that you stole. Now it's the production of the cost. Why don't we work to do something else? Tell GWA to stop charging enormous amounts for the water being consumed by the farmers and allowing their bond covenants to go into such deep rates that they have to hurt our farmers in that way. Now we want justice for the production cost to the owner? Why can't the courts decide this? We don't know the case. We don't know the situation of the individual. We don't know the situation of the family. And we want justice on surface value? We're not even diving deep into what the situation was. We're just saying, you did this, justice. You didn't ask, justice. Shame on you. Don't you think that person is embarrassed in the first place that they have to take the food? Don't you think that's an embarrassment already? Is that not enough shame? We have to attach a freaking larger consequence? Excuse me for saying freaking. And we're doing this in the middle of recovering from COVID. Just yesterday we were talking about the cars lining up for food. And now we're focusing on justice for food. In the middle of people suffering, we want now to put production costs. And we don't trust the courts to decide what the consequence will be. We don't trust the courts to decide whether they're going to confiscate a third party's truck for loaning it out to a person in need in the family that did this thing that they had no control over if they took the vehicle in the first place. For food. Yes, I think it's wrong to take from the farmers. Absolutely, but we are politicizing this whole situation. In the midst of people suffering, where's the mercy? Where's the forgiveness? Where's the understanding and compassion? Nothing. Only justice. Shame on you. Let's amplify that shame by attaching consequence on consequence on consequence. Why not kick them while they're down? Beat them even. If none of us have ever taken anything in our own life from someone, then throw the first stone. For food.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to take a 1-minute recess, please. We're back online. So on the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to speak on the Perez amendment? Senator Taitakwi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. You know, Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of this amendment. The farmers have been asking for more teeth. You could see it in the interview in PNC when the farmers mentioned, we need more teeth to the laws to help protect our crops. The funding that's used in order to grow within a single acre, Madam Speaker, that costs money. Not just money, but a lot of hard sweat, tears, long hours. You know, I looked at the occupations and found that farming is considered one of the top 4 hardest occupations to have. They spend long hours. It's mentally and physically draining. It's to a point we're doing everything we can to encourage the next generation to be farmers because we are losing our farmers. They can no longer make a living. How are we going to put food on the table if we don't have farmers to grow the food so that we can eat? What are we going to do then? We're trying to keep the farmers afloat, to let them have a living, to be able to provide food for their family. Now, if you do the math on this, or anybody, it's simple math. I can sell a bag of corn for maybe $50. But it also took at least 25 to grow that corn. He only gets half of that profit. If this legislation was to assist in the cost of growing food, as well as how much it will sell, then I think if the farmer is lucky enough to catch the perpetrators, and that's another thing that none of us are thinking about. How many people have been caught? It's very low. We're deterring, this bill, what it does, it deters individuals from stealing the hard work of our farmers on Guam. And anybody else who's interested in becoming a farmer, which is, it's difficult job, then at least they know they're going in it where the government is supporting them. Hope Cristobal had an excellent testimony about the farmers and the need for more teeth. This was a former senator asking and pleading with this body for more teeth to the law. And here's a senator who knows about what the law can do and how it can help our community. And that's what we're doing here today. Madam Speaker, I can go on, but I'll allow my other colleagues, and I'm standing in full support of this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Senator Virgil, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment. Again, this was something that was asked by the farmers during the public hearing. They asked that, one farmer, Mr. Wustig, said fair market value is not enough. I think he threw out some number he made up, like it should be 10 times the fair market value. I don't remember the exact number he threw out, but he said it was not enough. He asked that we do more, add more teeth to it. So I thank the proffer of this amendment for the amendment, and I support it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, then Senator Perez, you are recognized on the amendment, and if you could please clarify that this amendment is in conformance with the current version of the bill on the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, so the amendment that I proffered used the introduced version rather than what's on the file today. So I would like to allow legal to make that correction based on what's in the drive. So really, what this amendment would do, it would add, in addition to fair market value, it would add the production cost. And so just to kind of comment about the other amendments that have passed, it does still give the courts discretion. So if you look at the amendments that were passed previously, it's a may and not shall. So I think that's important to note. So this bill does add more teeth in allowing the court more discretion to enforce. And I think also it's important to acknowledge that the fair market value doesn't come close to the production of agricultural products. And so, yeah, this amendment was proffered in recognition and of that to ensure that our farming, the livelihood of our farmers, or the farming aspect can continue and sustain itself. And again, I think there are other ways, should a family need food, there are other ways that can be used instead of stealing. And I think this really is a bill that's long overdue. I mean, if you heard in the public the public hearing, they've been dealing with this for decades. And I think it's important that this bill recognizes their struggles in trying to keep farming here on Guam, despite all the challenges, from theft to pests, to typhoons. And, farming is one of the most precarious livelihoods there is because they have to deal with these elements. And I think the more that we can support them in this effort, I think it supports the greater good of our community. And again, the root causes of stealing, it still can be addressed with this bill. There is a restorative justice aspect to this. I mean, we've heard in other bills that, perhaps there were drugs, people steal because it's related to drugs, right? And, this bill does allow for that. It allows for that particular type of restorative justice, in addition to providing more teeth. So there are many options, and I think that's what these amendments do. It helps to restore, support for our farmers. It also has elements to assist with those that are committing the crime. So I ask for my colleagues' support. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi. So is there a formal objection to the amendment? Yes, there is. So all of those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment passes. Senator Perez, you're still recognized on the bill. All right, so on the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Taitukwi, you're recognized.
I'll make this very short. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. I stand in full support of this measure. I'd like to thank the author for not giving up. I know he was working on this in the 35th Guam Legislature, and I'm very thankful that he wants to continue on to help the farmers, as well as everyone here today. I believe we all want to help the farmers out. So I thank you, and I ask if I could be a co-sponsor on this legislation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I want to thank the farmers for all the work they do, and I respect that the work that they do. My father is a farmer. I understand the hard work that goes into it. I was a young child being introduced into it. It's difficult. Waiting for harvest for the eggplant and getting bit by mosquitoes, cutting down the eggplant, then having to go to the stores or to the vegetable stands selling the eggplant. I understand the work that goes into it. I'm grateful for my father for teaching me this type of labor. Of course, as a child, I did not see the wisdom behind it. But as an adult, I am greatly appreciative to my father for instilling this type of skill set to me. And our family, they farm a lot of land, so I understand. And we don't hire extra people, it's just the work of our hands. I'm not against a consequence for when you do something wrong. But when you instill language into the law, even though that it says may, you already create a foundation for any defendant or plaintiff to place their case. And so as lawyers, you utilize the language within the law to state your case. So yes, we can say may, but it's who is more convincing that will win. Whose interpretation of the ambiguity and the vagueness of the law that will win? And in the measure, what we included are set consequences for even secondary and third-party impacts. So now we will look to our community and say, hey, don't loan your truck out to your cousin, your sister, or your brother, because you don't know what they're going to do with it, and it just might be confiscated by the courts. Oh, and by the way, if you go and take and steal something from the harvest, you're not only going to be charged for what you took. There's a formula that's not even in this bill that's going to be devised somehow, magically, that's going to appear to show what the production costs were. There's no scientific approach to what you're going to owe, just what they feel is recompense. Where is the fairness in that? There's no formula that shows this, what you're going to owe back. Production costs. How are you going to show me production costs for a truckload of okra? How are you going to calculate that formula? 10 times of what I sell the okra for per pound. It's the amendments that make specific consequence that we added onto this bill that I take issue with. Not the bill in itself as it was presented, it's the consequence that we added in this past hour. That we did not leave up to the courts to discern where the plaintiff and the defendant can actually come together on the table and work it out. We can name people in our community like Hope Cristobal and so forth, and I respect Auntie Hope. She's done great work for the community. And I used to work for Mr. Wistick when I was a new graduate from college for the soil and water conservation. But we attached consequences on this bill that does not show differentiation between whether I am taking this crop for my family or whether I am taking this crop to make a profit. We attach consequences of production costs where there's no formula in this amendment for what production costs will be. We attached consequences for if you loan your vehicle out to someone and they use your vehicle to take the crop, your vehicle gets confiscated also. And those are the things that are attached into this bill that I cannot support for this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there any senator who would like to be recognized on the bill? If not, then Senator Virgil, you may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I ask my colleagues for their support on this measure. I'd like to thank the Department of Agriculture for bringing the need for this measure to my attention, as well as the many farmers that I've spoken to that have brought the need for this measure to my attention. I know there's some concerns by the previous speaker, the retiring speaker, about perhaps being too harsh with some of the punishments. But I think the punishments are fair. And I think that this is something that the farmers did ask for. They specifically asked. They said that there wasn't enough teeth in the measure. So we added some more. I know there's a concern about whether or not what the formula would be to determine what the cost of production would be. Again, the way that amendment is written, it leaves it up to the judge and the court to decide. And it's also a may. So if the judge feels there's not enough evidence to show what the cost of production is, or even if the judge just feels that the cost of production is not justified, the judge doesn't have to include the cost of production. It's an or. So it's up to the judge again, and I think that it's good to allow flexibility like that, allow the judge the ability to determine if the case warrants including the cost of production, and if the cost of production can be proven. Now, I would think that one way a judge can determine this, if the judge so chooses, is by requiring the farmer, him or herself, to provide proof of the cost of production. And if the judge feels that the evidence that's provided doesn't really prove the cost of production, the judge doesn't have to include it. So again, it allows the judge to make that determination. Same thing with the confiscation of vehicles. Same thing with the auctioning of the vehicles. These are all left to the judge's determination. And so I know there's also concern about differentiating sort of between whether or not someone is stealing to feed themselves if they're hungry or whether they're stealing to sell it. So first of all, the testimony from all the farmers at the public hearing, excuse me, not all the farmers, the testimony received at the public hearing and discussions that I've had with many farmers, all the farmers tell me that people are primarily not stealing to feed themselves. They're really stealing to feed a drug habit. And that's what the farmers say. And the reason they say is because they catch them sometimes, the thieves, reselling their own produce to different places, different people, different markets. And that's why, yes, this bill is not a silver bullet to fix the issue. That's why there's a companion piece of legislation that I hope will truly help address the issue. And that's a piece of legislation we'll be having a public hearing on March 31st. And that's the Bona Fide Farmers Bill that I think works well with this legislation. I introduced both pieces of legislation at the same time so that they could work together. And that Bona Fide Farmers Bill requires that people purchase produce, businesses in particular, from bona fide farmers so that they're not buying it from people who are stealing it just to make money. And so, in addition to the testimony from farmers and what many farmers have told me, that people are stealing to sell it and not necessarily to feed themselves, the law for theft of property in it does have some differentiation, if I said that correctly, between thefts of property. And what that is a misdemeanor is more than $50. A felony of the third degree is $500 to $1,500 worth. A felony of the second degree is anything more than $1,500. I think that in and of itself, helps to differentiate between whether or not someone's stealing because they're hungry or if they're stealing for money. You know, if someone's stealing because they're hungry, maybe they stole $50 worth of produce, then it's a misdemeanor. If someone's stealing over $1,500 of produce, I guarantee you they cannot eat $1,500 of produce before the produce spoils. So I guarantee you that if they're stealing more than $1,500 of produce, they're stealing that produce to sell it to someone. So again, while I understand some of the concerns that were raised today, I don't think that this bill is being too harsh. I think, in fact, this bill is something that's going to help the farmers. It's going to help the farmers feel like someone's paying attention to them, that we're paying attention to them. I think agriculture as a whole has been ignored for too long. And so one of my major goals as a public servant is to help improve agriculture and help develop a strong agricultural industry on Guam. And I think part of that involves helping the farmers, to protect the farmers from thefts by people who want to make money off of their hard work. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my co-sponsor, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes, for her support on the measure, as well as others who have spoken in support. And I'd like to make a motion to add Senator Tello Taitagui, who has requested to be a co-sponsor of the measure, as a co-sponsor to the measure, as well as Senator Pito Terlahi, who has requested to be a co-sponsor of the measure, to the measure.
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
Point of information.
Point of information.
Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the comment that was stated earlier for an individual believing that the consequences were harsh, that's not the case. There was reference made to 15,000, I don't know if it's correct, but perhaps the previous speaker can correct me if I'm wrong. If someone is taking 15,000 pounds of a produce, that does not mean that they're using it to feed their family. Is that statement correct? And if that statement is correct, Madam Speaker, in the bill nowhere does it say, or any measurement of amount of
Senator-
pounds of crops that are being taken,
Senator Nelson.
that will be, yes,
Yeah,
that will be being taken.
The time for debate on the bill is done, and we're going to take the comments of the speaker as, any of the speakers, we're just going to have to take them at face value. So on the motion to amend this, I'm sorry, Senator Virgil, was it?
The motion was to add,
Yeah, to add the sponsors. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Virgil.
Madam Speaker, I motion to place Bill 62-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, and further amended on the floor into the third reading file, and I ask for my colleagues' support.
On the motion to place the bill in the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Okay, Senators, we have one more bill on our second reading file. And as you know, we have been discussing with legal as to whether we are going to respond to the court's invitation on the litigation. But we are going to recess until 10:30 tomorrow to continue with the last bill on our agenda and any other motions that might be made. So we're recessed until 10:30 tomorrow morning.